Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November 18th, 2020 business meeting of the Daytona Beach Community Redevelopment Agency, that is our CRA. We're delighted to have you with us this evening. Ms. LaMagna will review the procedures for tonight's meeting.
Good evening. Agendas and exhibits pertaining to items on the agenda are in the lobby. Persons may visit City Hall during a public meeting to make public comments on propositions coming before the Community Redevelopment Agency for a vote, subject to these city procedures in compliance with all recommendations from the CDC to minimize the spread of COVID-19. The Commission chambers will be closed for in-person attendance by the public. The lobby will be equipped with audio-video feed to the Commission chambers, and a lectern and microphone will be placed immediately inside the chamber door for public comment. Blue forms will be provided to persons who wish to make public comment. Persons may enter the lobby to speak on an item before the Community Redevelopment Agency when called upon for 2.5 minutes. The lobby will have a defined area with social distancing for persons waiting to make public comment. In addition, the exterior entryway of City Hall will be equipped with a loudspeaker for persons waiting for permission to enter to make public comment during space limitations in the lobby. Persons may also monitor public meetings from their iPhone, iPad, or other electronic devices on the city's website and enter City Hall for public comment at the appropriate times. All persons must comply with social distancing requirements while at City Hall, such as remaining 6 feet apart. Use of facial masks is mandatory to combat the spread of COVID-19. All citizens completing a blue form will be allowed to speak for 2.5 minutes. When you approach the lectern, please speak clearly into the microphone and give your full name and address. The 2.5-minute clock on the monitor above the dais will start running when you begin to speak. Pay close attention to your time. You will be told when your time has expired. Disorderly conduct in the public meeting of the City Commission. Article 2, Section 6238 of the City Code of Ordinances reads as follows. It shall be unlawful for any person to behave in a riotous or disorderly manner in any public meeting of the City Commission, or any committee, agency, or board thereof, or to cause any unnecessary disturbances therein by force, shouting, or any other action that is calculated to disrupt such meeting, or to refuse to obey any ruling of the presiding officer or such meeting relative to the orderly process thereof. All conversation must take place either at the lectern or on the dais so that everyone can hear the business being discussed tonight.
Ms. LaMagna, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Traeger.
Here.
Commissioner Delgado. Commissioner May.
Here.
Commissioner Cantu.
Here.
Commissioner Henry.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Mayor Derek L. Henry.
Here. We will now have the invocation led by Commissioner Reed, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Traeger.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, as we prepare for another holiday called Thanksgiving, we want to give you thanks on this day. Thank you for the families that are represented here tonight. Thank you for the citizens that live here. Thank you for those who come to visit. And then thank you for this group of individuals that sit on this dais who've accepted the responsibility to serve this city to the best of our ability. We thank you, Lord, that the storms have hopefully passed over. We thank you that you've just been so good to us. You really, really have. And Lord, on this day, we ask that as we come together once again to make decisions on behalf of the city, that we would be mindful of our citizens and our decision-making, that we would be conscientious of the monies that we spend and how we spend them, and that we would do the best of our ability when we talk and speak to one another in respectful ways, and we'll be careful to give you all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise. In Jesus' name I pray and for his sake, let us all say, Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under item number 4, the approval of the October 21st, 2020 business meeting of the Community Redevelopment Agency will be presented at the next CRA meeting. So there's no minutes to approve tonight.
No.
No minutes to approve tonight
Okay.
for CRA. So we'll move on to approval of the agenda.
All right, yeah, we'll have our approval of the agenda at this time.
No changes, Mr.
No. All right, we have No changes to our agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
We take a motion from Commissioner Traeger and a second from Commissioner May. Any questions or comments? All right, all those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed, same sign. This motion carries 6-0.
Okay. We'll now move on to item number 6, which is our administrative items. Item 6A is the City Manager's Office Project Delta West Redevelopment Incentive Grant Agreement Resolution. A resolution approving the Project Delta West Redevelopment Incentive Grant Agreement between the City of Daytona Beach, the City of Daytona Beach Redevelopment Agency, and Framework Group LLC, providing for the CRA to pay developer an economic incentive grant up to $10,500,000 upon developer's completion of Phase 1 of Project Delta West, subject to conditions, including that Phase 1 must include a minimum of 200 residential dwelling units and a parking garage with at least 500 parking spaces. Developer must reserve a minimum of 88 spaces within the parking garage for public parking. Developer shall provide at least 30 rental units for moderate income households, and the grants shall be paid annually from the community redevelopment tax increment revenue generated by the improved property, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute the agreement on behalf of the city and providing an effective date.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? No second?
Could we have some discussion possibly?
Why would we not have a second to be able to discuss it? Anyone?
Okay. Okay, so may I start? Do we have any citizens' comments that would help, not help? I'm just curious, any extra information?
I didn't receive any online, but I do have a number of speakers signed up to speak on this item.
Okay. Can we hear what some, actually, I have a couple of questions. I mean, when we second something, all it's doing, it's allowing us to have conversation about it. It's not saying yes or no, we're just allowing conversation. So, Mr. Chisholm, I'm going to put you on the spot, sir. Is this the best deal that we're going to get? Seriously, is this the best deal we're going to get?
Well, you know, it's very hard to say it's the best you're going to get because you don't know what's out there. I do know this, that we've been trying to find somebody to put a proposal in, and this is the only proposal that came forward.
So for how long have we been trying to get this going?
Probably, how long?
I have a presentation if it pleases the commission. That may help.
I think they want to ask questions.
Okay.
And what the question is this in our opinion, is this a good deal?
CTO has engaged with over 10 developers prior to working with Framework Group, and this is the developer that they brought forward as far as the best deal that is in the opinion of the commission. But we've had diligent discussions with the developer in trying to find a solution that met the needs of the commission and the community.
So the second question was, how long have you been bidding?
Yeah.
As far as the length of time of project, I believe it started
Aaron.
as soon as CTO Realty purchased the property. They began to market the property and interest developers. We've worked with Framework for, I want to say it's been close to 6 months now. But prior to that, we were working with CTO on trying to, as we've seen different versions of what this development may look like. So it's been over a year that we've been in discussions for this property, but about approximately 6 months with Framework.
We did have a company come in about over a year ago, and they were looking at the opportunity zone as a method of participating with us, but they once COVID came on, they didn't have an interest after that.
And then how important is this in the overall scheme of redeveloping, not redeveloping, of improving areas on Beach Street and then hopefully east and west of Beach Street? Does this, I mean, what if we just didn't do it? Let's talk about that. What is the worst case scenario that happens there?
Worst case, you have property that's vacant. It'll sit there until somebody finds a way to put a project together. The other thing you have, the other interesting thing is you have Brown and Brown's building a building, getting ready to open. There's 600 employees going to be moved into the area. One of the things they were looking for is a place that they could, lease out for these employees. So it's.
So I want to, I want to understand worst case. So worst case is we have a park, we have a downtown that's been refurbished a little bit, right? And then we have not enough people to actually participate in this experience. Or do we believe that the residents from Beachside and the residents all over Daytona Beach are going to come and frequent these facilities? And that's really what's going to really drive that downtown area.
I think the success of downtown is largely dependent upon residents in the downtown area. And right now, you don't have a sufficient number to make it feasible for a lot of these businesses. And I think that was the reason for the incentive is to bring a business in, show that it does provide opportunity for us to grow the residential population in the downtown area. And in doing so, that would create an atmosphere where the business community could economically survive in this environment. And beyond that, it would also show that there's other interest that might bring their investments in the downtown area also.
Okay. All right, those are my questions.
I had a conversation with Mr. Smith, and my understanding during our discussion that we came up with agreement that the 88 parking spaces will be at no charge for 5 years for the citizens.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is correct. And we could amend the agreement to reflect as such.
Okay.
Necessary.
I would have also liked to see the 30 units more like 15 years instead of 5 years. I feel that the citizens should be getting more out of this project.
I can't answer for the developer. I'd defer that to them, but I know that the financial sensitivity of the project, given that the land cost on the east side is much more valuable than the west side, they needed the city's assistance to partner with the garage, and then we later on added the public parking component and the affordable workforce housing component.
Okay, because with the proposal for the 88 parking spaces, that's about $2.2 million I projected over the 5 years. And we're going to be giving $10,500,000.
Yes, the per space parking count is approximately 17,500 per space. And so, yes, we're about $1.5 million of value of those 88 spaces.
That's over the 30-year period.
Yes, that correct. So the value of those spaces over 30 years is $1.5 million.
Yeah.
The phase one, is that when they finish building the parking garage or when they finish building the apartment also?
Phase one includes a 200 minimum in the multifamily housing building, 500 space parking garage, and of course, all the landscaping amenities that are
Okay.
required.
Because they just said multi-family parking garage, and just want to make sure that it was included both.
It's reflected in the definitions in 2.15 and also throughout the document.
Thank you.
You say you have a presentation?
I do, sir.
Okay. You have a presentation. Let's see the presentation, and then if we can delve down into further questions. So at least we'll see what we may be bringing to the community. Okay.
All right, with your permission. I should have announced this earlier. Drew Driscoll, Deputy City Manager and Fire Chief.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for the record, that Commissioner Aaron Delgado is present.
Yes.
At our last meeting discussing this item, I would say that we had a textbook definition of civil discourse. Each person from both sides of the aisle or opposing views was given an opportunity to speak, but I think most importantly, we were given an opportunity to be heard. And I think that's a continued demonstration of this commission. At that same meeting, this commission directed the city manager and city staff to re-enter negotiations with the developer and deliver a creative solution for providing workforce housing, new workforce housing opportunities to the city. And additionally, from those conversations, new creative ideas also came out about providing affordable housing, not just in Project Delta, but things that we could implement in the future throughout our city. Tonight, briefly, I'll refresh the community on Project Delta, walk us through the updated agreement, speak about the community benefits brought forward by this project, offer a brief explanation of tax increment financing, and lastly, I could answer any of the community's concerns that have been publicly raised. There we go. So Project Delta West is an incubator for transformational renewal in our downtown urban core. As you see from this slide, there's intended to be a reimagination of our downtown to include 299 multifamily apartment units, along with 581 space parking garage. Again, we have the minimums per the agreement of 200 units and 500 spaces. The long-term vision is to entertain a grocer, restaurant, retail, and other complementary uses on this project site. Here we see Project Delta West site as it stands today, a vacant, barren chunk of our urban downtown. In 2019, we received $22,175 in taxes for this piece of vacant land. The year prior to that was $15,000. That was the year that they had a religious exemption on the property. Project Delta Future, it's estimated for a tax increment total of $618,068. Of course, if the conversation stopped there, we'd all smile, hugs and kisses, and we'd move on to the next agenda item, hopefully, but this is a serious conversation, and we know that members of our community do have concerns. So to walk us through the agreement, the max benefit that this developer could receive for the incentive is capped at $10.5 million. The grant allows them 90% of the eligible tax increment. As our previous discussion, you recall that was 95%. It's been reduced down to 90%. The incentive grant period is for the term of the life of the CRA. Currently, that is December 31st of 2036, though previous conversations on the dais have suggested a desire to extend that CRA life for the statutory limit of 2042. Again, the developer cannot begin being a beneficiary of the reward of the grant until the construction of minimum 200 multifamily units, 500 space parking garage, and a minimum construction value of $60 million. The big question is, how does this long overdue project in our downtown core benefit our community? Here we talk about the economic impacts, the $108 million in just the one-time economic infusion. That's the materials, the installers of the materials, the truck drivers that drive materials, the restaurants that feed the installers, the bills that are paid from the installers' paychecks, the water to hydrate the workers, and by the way, we provide the water that services this property, so there are other economic reasons for us. The new residential base activates our downtown core. All of our recent efforts to give a road diet to Beach Street, to create activity, the Brown family's contribution to our remodel of the Riverfront Esplanade, all these activities were meant to activate downtown and make it a more vibrant 24/7 location instead of a Monday through Friday condition. Residential tax base, of course, also brings people to patronize our downtown shops. This probably couldn't be more important following COVID, that we know that our shop owners are struggling right now. As I previously mentioned, increased property values, employment, and taking a vacant piece of dirt and rising something new out of that land to eliminate blight. And with our current master plan that was adopted in 2010, we have a map with a red line that shows where downtown is. This project doesn't just redraw a red line on a map. We effectively expand the footprint of downtown to begin including the Ridgewood corridor that has had its better days, as we all know. Incubator, catalyst, whatever the source throws at you. Like a baby incubator, this project has the ability to nurture growth and foster an environment of community activity. As we've gone through the process of beautifying West International Speedway Boulevard out west, and we slowly trucked east, this is at that gateway intersection of both Ridgewood and West International Speedway as we continue to hopefully one day tackle the challenge of East ISB. This significant investment does spark new redevelopment and new growth within our downtown and hopefully our Ridgewood corridor. We know that Burgoyne properties, as shown on this picture, they've been engaged in the internal city technical review process, and I assure you that they are waiting to see the results of Mr. Smith's investment in downtown so they could start also. When we speak about smart growth and planning, we think about the infrastructure first. Can our infrastructure handle? Infrastructure is no different than water lines, or I'm sorry, parking is no different than water lines, except it consumes much more space. Within Project Delta, there will be a parking structure with 88 new public parking spaces, and as we heard this evening just a few moments ago, would be dedicated without fees for a period of 5 years when the incentive begins after the completion of Phase 1. These public spaces will be dedicated to the public for a period of 30 years. As we begin to, as we talked about during Daytona Merging, revitalize and go through our renaissance of downtown, we are going to lose some of our public spaces. Right now, we lease public spaces on the Burgoyne property site. If they develop those sites, we will lose those spaces. So this gives us not only a way to absorb that impact, but additionally absorb future impact as we bring new tourism and new visitors to downtown. The big one, housing opportunities. This city has made a bold statement to tackle affordable housing, attainable housing, workforce housing, moderate housing, whatever definition we wish to give it. And I believe Project Delta is that initial step. Is it the entire elephant? No. It is a first bite at that elephant, but it also gives us avenues to utilize the funding from Project Delta and grow beyond just 30 units. But with included in this agreement is we're incentivizing 30 housing units for a period of 5 years to be made available for residents making up to the moderate 120% income. This is, in that income level, is based on the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, or HUD data. We selected that data for consistency with other city programs, consistency with the Housing Authority, but it is, as we discussed last meeting, it is not strategically focused on just Daytona Beach, but nor is Census ACS data, as we know that uses census tracts that blur the lines of our jurisdictional boundaries and is self-reporting. Addition to the housing opportunities, upon opening, it stated that already 80 units will be in that workforce category. And so when I say workforce, Drew Driscoll say it was workforce, I'm referring to couples who are teachers, firefighters, entry-level City of Daytona Beach employees, police officers, front desk clerks at our hoteliers. That's who I'm referring to, but I know we have yet to set our firm definition. In addition to this, so the question has arisen, what if they're non-compliant? So for each non-compliant unit that is underperforming or not capturing our target demographic, there's a $2,000 per unit per year penalty. That dollar will then be inserted, hopefully, into a CRA housing trust fund. That ensures that this commission's original demand for providing for housing is met, whether they underperform or it comes through a trust fund type scenario. In addition to that, the 10% TIF that we would claim from this, they get the 90, we get the 10, that's valued at $54,498. So, yes. Oh, sorry.
On opening, 80 units is scheduled to meet workforce affordability, and we're going to subsidize for 5 years, 30.
Yes, ma'am. We are going to subsidize 30 units for a period of 5 years for moderate income housing,
And that's
up to
going
120% AMI.
that is going to come out of the 90% TIF that we,
That is correct. It will come out of the TIF revenues that they receive. It's almost as if it's a bonus for their participation.
so it's 90%, because I saw some place it showed 95%.
No,
It's
ma'am.
90%.
It's 90%. The 95 was a reflection of the statutory reference of the monies that are received by the city.
Thank you.
And so there are several community benefits that I briefly walked through. I understand we have differing opinions, probably amongst us and the community, of what are those benefits enough. I believe there are significant benefits to our downtown area in reactivating not only downtown, but hopefully our Ridgewood core. And so, again, at the last meeting, I gave an infographic regarding tax increment financing. And John Nicholson called me out for my explanation, so I wanted to take another stab at it just to see if I could offer a simplified explanation of tax increment financing. So here on the screen, we see a building on a parcel. Let's say this existing building has a tax bill of $20,000. That is our base rate. A developer such as Framework Group decides to come in and make an investment on that parcel. The new tax bill is generated at $620,000. This new improvement essentially constitutes the makeup of what the tax increment is. So in a very raw and simplified equation, we could see the new tax bill of $620,000, subtracting that base rate of $20,000, giving us our tax increment. And again, there's other deductions that come off of this, but 90% of that would go to the developer if the agreement were approved this evening. And other than that, I do have some answers to some of the publicly stated community questions, but I'll allow them an opportunity to ask them. But otherwise, myself, city staff's available, and Philip Smith from Framework Group is available for your questions.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Driscoll. Let's go ahead and hear from the residents at this time.
Okay. So our first speaker tonight is Sean Collins, and on deck is Jack White.
Good evening. My name is Sean Collins. I'm from the Midtown Redevelopment Board. First off, Mr. Mayor, 2.5 minutes is not a long time, and I know you're pushed for time, but as a representative from the Midtown Board, I'd ask to have some leeway, if possible.
Not that this is not a Midtown issue, and that won't be. I'll give you the time that you have. We can start it over at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. But go ahead.
I'll start off with, I guess, the comment that Commissioner May made early. Is this the best we can get? I don't think it is. When you're doing negotiation, and I'm not trying to preach to the choir, but it's a think outside the box process, and you start with basics, but you can be creative. And I don't think there's much creativity that was, I guess, involved in this negotiation. It's just one point. The other point is the numerator that we've used in section 3 of the part of the agenda that was sent out. The numerator in this case is, I guess it's tied to the TIF, and that's okay. But what we should be looking at more specifically is when we're talking about, I guess in this case, liquidated damages. And liquidated damages is nothing more than the penalty that the developer would have to pay in case they don't meet the 30 units. And $2,000, when you multiply that by 30, that's $60,000 a year. Most of these developers can pay that in cash in chump change. And I'm not being facetious. If you're going to make an incentive for these developers to stick to that 30, it should be something that they have to really think twice about by not being serious about it. And so I would ask that and not a specific number, it's just be tied to, in this case, the amount of the tax revenue that you're getting for that year. Again, using that same example, $500,000 divided by the 30 units, you're talking about $16,600 per unit every year. If the developer knows that they're not going to make that 30, but if they don't make that 30, they got to pay almost $17,000. I think they'll be a little bit more incentivized to go out and try and fill those seats. It's the first thing. The extended period of time, Commissioner Cantu mentioned that. 5 years is ridiculous. It should be tied to the life of that TIF dollars that they're getting back, 30 years a minimum. Again, enough of an incentive, thinking outside the box, being creative. And finally, there need to be more specificity in this agreement, a specificity in the sense that what is the moderate income level number? What is, I don't know what it is. We should have that. These contracts be based on those. We need to have specificities, think outside the box, and for sure, those liquidated damages
Thank you,
should
sir.
be more hurtful to the developer. For the time,
Thank you.
think twice. That number is just way too low.
Our next speaker is Jack White, and on deck is Sandy Murphy.
Oh, Jack.
Good evening, Jack White, 415 South Palmetto. I have to ask, if not this project, what project? We've been waiting almost 40 years for a project like this to come forward, and I'll probably be dead if we have to wait another 40 years. It's a long process, and a lot of people have spent a lot of effort trying to reinvigorate the downtown. We are desperate for people to live downtown. It's easy to come up with points on why it can't work. It doesn't cost anything. But I can tell you the cost of not having housing downtown is great. It's detrimental to the success and our future of our downtown. Ask the merchants. Not having people downtown and expecting people from Ormond and Port Orange to come to our downtown, it's not working. It hasn't worked for 40 years, and it won't work in the next 40. This is a model CRA project. It's on a site that has never collected tax revenue. It brings a much-needed resident to our downtown. It continues the great progress that you all have already made by supporting the Brown and Brown project, the Riverfront project, the Streetscape project, and it also ensures that we will have future developers, for example, the Burgoyne, and it shows a good faith effort that we are supportive of the future of our downtown. I appreciate your support in the past. I ask for your support now, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sandy Murphy, and on deck is Ann Ruby.
Good evening, Sandy Murphy, 136 Park Avenue. This incentive agreement uses 125% of the median annual income for our standard metropolitan statistic area, and that criteria makes the rental subsidy in this agreement almost meaningless. That number for the Daytona Beach, Ormond Beach SMSA is almost $78,000. Using the median income for Daytona Beach creates a different picture. Our median income is just under $33,000. 120% of that is a little over $38,000. With the SMSA median, an affordable monthly rent is up to $1,900, but the Daytona Beach household can only afford $987 a month before they're rent burdened. A household with $1,900 a month to spend on rent can find housing anywhere in Daytona Beach. These are not the people that we need to be providing with rental assistance. This is not a significant contribution to workforce housing. Also, we're told that the 88 spaces reserved for public parking are worth $1.7 million. The subsidy of $10.5 million for this seems excessive. Our redevelopment area plan calls for the city to consider public incentives, including TIF, to close economic gaps. A $7 million difference between the value provided and the tax increment may be saying that this is the wrong project in the wrong place at the wrong time. With $10.5 million in TIF financing, what other projects might become feasible? Might that level of incentive attract a different developer with the capacity to include some true workforce housing? Finally, our staff fails to include the cost side of the equation in their project analysis. They include speculative returns like potential catalyst effects. These same catalyst effects have been anticipated from the Brown & Brown headquarters, the $800,000 a year for the Riverfront Esplanade, the narrowing of Beach Street, and the streetscape improvements on MMB from Beach to Ridgewood. Given all those other catalysts in play, maybe we should wait to see what impact those bring before we give back virtually all of the tax income from Phase 1 of this PD. I understand that we would be giving away what doesn't yet exist. But if you believe the hype of all the projects currently on the table, this will not be the only opportunity for redevelopment of this parcel. If you believe in this area, please hold out for a better deal.
Our next speaker is Ann Ruby, and on deck is Kelly White.
Ann Ruby, 137 Park Avenue. I am going to only say that I completely support everything that Sandy Murphy said. She said it perfectly and eloquently. I'd also like to just mention some of the things that I've heard in comments here tonight. If there were 10 developers who presented projects, proposed projects on this, why don't we see what those look like? Why was this the one that was accepted? Why was this the one? Why haven't you seen the rest of them? We need to see the rest of them. If a developer disappeared who was going to use opportunity zone tax credits because of COVID, let's see where they are now. There are other deals out there, and we should wait for them. You know, Jack White said he's been waiting 40 years to see this get revitalized, and he might have to wait another 40. If you think that this is the only project that's going to revitalize Beach Street, then why did we spend all that money to narrow Beach Street, to pay for the maintenance on the park, to get Brown & Brown headquarters to stay here? That argument doesn't hold water, and it doesn't make sense. I'd like to know, how much public money do we have to continue to spend to revitalize Beach Street? We've narrowed the street. We gave Brown & Brown money to put their headquarters here. We're gonna pay for maintenance on the park for 50 years. We're rebuilding the breakwater. How much money do we have to, public money, do we have to spend on Beach Street while Main Street gets painted planters, MMB gets backless benches and some new trash cans, and, enhanced banners? How much money do we have to spend to revitalize 4 blocks of Beach Street while the rest of the city starts looking shabbier and shabbier? This is not a good deal for the city, and I urge you to not accept it. Keep looking. And maybe it's time that we wait until we get a new city manager. Maybe a new city manager could bring in some new developers and a more viable project. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kelly White, and on deck is Mike Cicchetti.
Good evening. It's always fun to be on this side of things. I congratulate you, Commissioner Cantu, on your recent win, and it's good to see you all. I've been following this as a citizen, and I think that the impact has been well stated that residential can provide to an area. We know that. We know that when people ask us questions like, why aren't there any grocery stores downtown? We know that you have to have the heads in beds to get them. I believe this Community Redevelopment Agency, which is a CRA, was created in the 1980s for downtown and was done so because there was a need for reinvestment. The tax increment financing tool that you have available to you, because this is a CRA, is a very powerful tool. And we really haven't had the chance as a city to use it in the downtown as I believe it was intended. The tax revenue that will be created by this, as it's been stated, is new revenue. It's not revenue that we have somewhere else that we're taking and giving away. It's all created revenue by private investment. It would be a shame not to capture these private projects and this new revenue. When the CRA sunsets, which I believe is in about 15 years, our city will be left with the tax base that we have or have not created. And while it's great to think about all of the people who might be out there with the perfect project for you, this is a real project with real revenues that we may not see the full extent of for the next 15 years because we are giving an abatement. But when the CRA sunset, that's revenue that will be available to the entire city. So I ask that you look at this as an investment. We've heard all the great things, and you've done a great job investing in downtown, but I encourage you to continue doing what you're doing and take a hard look at this.
Our next speaker is Mike Cicchetti, and on deck is Ken Strickland.
Michael Cicchetti, 125 North Ridgewood Avenue. I'm getting used to saying that address. I moved my law firm into the old Beck's building 2 weeks ago. And so yes, law firm. And everyone says attorneys love to talk about themselves. So guess what? I'm going to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about myself as a case study. I'm a graduate of Mainland High School, class of 1996. I think Mr. Henry was there, or Mayor Henry was there. I never wanted to move back to Daytona, but I got a job here. And so I took it as a young law school grad. That was 2004. I thought about moving multiple times. I started a young professionals group to kind of meet other young professionals in the area. And I met Jack White, one of my best friends today. And so Jack and I really worked at the Young Professionals group, growing the group, making Daytona a better place to live. And eventually I bought one of his lofts. Juanita was my neighbor right below with her dance studio. And as I lived in the lofts and I lived downtown, the idea of moving out of Daytona went away. I became more entrenched in the community. I enjoyed going out. My friends would come to downtown. We'd support the restaurants, Ronin, go to the Cubs game, Seaside when it was there. Don't worry, I'm going to give you a shout out, Delgado, because I know you were in the same spot as me, right? And so what is my point? Why am I talking about myself? I am the actual case study of a downtown resident that reluctantly never wanted to live in Daytona, wanted to move to Orlando, wanted to move back to Tampa. But I stayed. I stayed because of the Young Professionals group. I stayed because of the lofts. I stayed because we had a downtown that was vibrant, that there were things to do. And so now, from 2004 to 2020, what happens? I ended up buying the old Beck's building. I moved my law firm there. I'm now invested in 2 condos in the Wall Street lofts, both rented out to young professionals, one of which is one of my employees, right? And Delgado, what keeps a young attorney in Daytona? Having a vibrant community, right? And at that, so what you have is, and I know I'm running out of time, but what you're investing is not only a parking garage, not only a developer's idea, but you're investing in the people that are going to live there, that they're going to patronize downtown. Maybe one day,
Thank you.
the mainland grad will come back and open up a law firm and create 12 jobs in downtown Daytona, right? Maybe we'll double that one day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ken Strickland, and on deck is John Nicholson.
Ken Strickland, 1208 North Halifax. I'll speak real simply about this. We're 20 years into the 21st century. The stock market's strong, gold and silver up. However, 26% of our population live at or below the poverty line here in Daytona Beach. 57.6% of our children live in poverty, yet we can't seem to find a developer that has their own money or their own banker. Quite frankly, most residents that I know are kind of sick and tired of subsidizing developers with our tax money while we continue to walk on broken sidewalks, drive on streets that have potholes in them. It's time for our residents to be taken care of first. Thank you.
And my final speaker on this item is John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, 413 North Granview Avenue. I've only lived in Daytona Beach about 40 years, but when I moved here, there weren't any CRAs. There wasn't a vibrant downtown because it already evacuated. Some of you that live here and are on this commission will remember downtown being vital, but when the malls opened, downtown went out to the malls. When the Speedway opened, they went out there. So Tanger Outlet Mall opened, and I was told by one of the members on this commission that it would probably fail and nothing would happen there. And I was saying that it was going to grow, it was going to be vital, because all the other things that were going out there. I was told by city manager that I wasn't quite correct. I was told by Rob Gilliland that nothing was going to go out there. There was a rumor that Margaritaville was coming in. And Rob Gilliland said, no, that's not going in. There won't be a home out there until probably 2025 or later. There are homes out in Margaritaville. Development does happen. I lived right across from the Wyndham, Ocean Walk. The Marriott went in right after I got here. They were given 100% of the CRA. And it sat there for a while. And then all of a sudden, George Anderson tried for 15 years to get the Wyndham in. And when he did, things began to change on the beach side. So I'm asking you, when you look at this, the Wyndham brings in, one building of the Wyndham brings in $1 million a year in taxes. There's an identical property at the other end of Ocean Avenue. It brings in $10,000 a year and has for the last 10 years. It's vacant. Beachside property, vacant. The idea that this is downtown, there's only been one thing in the last 40 years. Jack White built the lofts. Juanita can tell you it does exist. I'm not lying. But that's the only thing in 40 years. I'm asking you to take a chance. It may not be a bundle of money, but there are other things coming down the pike. Tanger Outlet Mall is not the only building out there. There are other buildings around Tanger Outlet Mall. There are residences out there around Tanger Outlet Mall. Margaritaville's going into another section. Mosaic is out there. Bayberry's complete because we invested in that. Please think of this, not 10 million. We gave 10 million to 20 years ago. This should be a $30 million deal.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Before we enter into,
I have one more speaker.
one more speaker, let me guess.
Miss Linda Smiley.
Linda Smiley. One more.
This mic outside is not working that great, by the way. Linda Smiley, 357 Manhattan. I just want to say that I support what Sandy said and what Ann said. I don't think this is the best deal that we can get. I don't think 5 years is enough for parking. And I don't think that we should continue to give money to developers. If they have to come with their hands out, we need to keep looking. I mean, it's always the same. And every time that something comes here, it's the game changer. It's going to be the one thing that we've been looking for forever. It's going to be the cat's meow here. And it never is. So I think, like Ann said, maybe we should wait and have a new city manager and young eyes, new eyes on the situation. Thank you.
That was my final speaker, Mr. Mayor.
All right, before we engage in dialogue, I would like to just say a few things. First of all, it's my hope that we wouldn't all of a sudden become a commission that believes the hype. And by the hype, I mean what Mr. Strickland referred to. We have to remember that what he's saying is that somehow we, by embracing a project like this, that we ignore sidewalks, streets in our community, as if this project somehow comes along and it takes money out of the taxpayers' pockets and inhibits us from doing something for the neighborhood. That is completely ridiculous and it's untrue. Mr. Driscoll explained what TIFT is. And so it's important that we have a community that not only a commission, but a community that understands that and that recognizes that. We don't, it's easy to come along and say that you give it to the developer, what's in it for the resident. And certainly we all want more for the resident. And that's why we've asked for things that we've asked for over the years. That's number one. The second thing is don't believe the hype. If someone showed up and they had a project to go on MMB, just as we made a mistake. I won't say we made a mistake, just didn't work out, but we certainly did all that we could on Martin Luther King with hopes of getting a development. If someone shows up with a project to go on Main Street, I'm going to be as engaged as I've ever been in any project to try to make that project happen. So it's sensationalism. It's residential yellow journalism, if you will, to say that somehow we don't want to develop those areas. We don't want to take care of their streets. I've been here all of my life, and I watched everything. 1974, my father was the beneficiary of the landscaping contract at the Volusia Mall, planted all the palm trees there. Of course, that led to the ultimate demise of downtown. My aunt worked downtown at when Sears was down there. And I'm barely old enough to remember those things. But what I'm also old enough to know is that for as long as I have lived, there has been next to nothing downtown that would attract me as a resident to go there. Next to nothing. And so that doesn't mean that, we can't critique what we're looking at. The other thing is that we have to remember that this project, if we say you had consolidated, talked to 10 people. They didn't get 10 fish on the line, they talked to 10 people. And they got one fish or one person to bite or one company. So it's important for us to remember that what was on this project before was a church. About a month ago, we incentivized a part of our community so that they will be able to build alcohol establishments close to churches. Well, we got a church that moves, and then we have a project that comes in. So let's not be a commission or a community that all of a sudden just flips to believe a narrative that I think is not progressive and not positive. And that doesn't mean we don't try to get what we refer to as the best deal. And the final thing I definitely want to say is there is no way that we should be a commission that sits up here and waits for Jim Chisholm to leave. No way. That's something I would completely reject, to halt and stall things. One thing about an economy, and I was a commissioner when we didn't have anybody doing anything in Daytona Beach. My predecessor, Glenn Ritchie, would always say the window of opportunity is narrow. He didn't have the window that I've had. During his time, we had to stabilize the market, the economy, and stabilize the city, stop the bleeding, and try to hold on to as many employees as we could and as many services as we could. So we don't know when that window closes. It doesn't mean you bite at anything, but it also doesn't mean that you assume that if you leave that property dormant for 5 years, then it's 5 more years, 10 years. Doesn't take anything to get to 15 years. And the goal is to, while things are exploding, and if you give one project an incentive, the next project gets less incentive. Remember what happened to Tanger. We incentivized Tanger, and North America came in, and all of the rest of the development out there is taking place. And that, all of those developments are what have us in a much better financial situation than we've ever been in, at least since I've been elected. So that's the start of my lecture, but let's have a discussion about the project and what it is that this commission would like to see to help it to be successful. Because ultimately, we need to have the project successful in order to get the rest of the development that we'd like to see in downtown. And there are others who are interested. And then when they come, they get less. It's just the way things work. It's a part of the evolution of the downtown, the way I see it. Okay, this discussion.
I just have one question. The TIP money is allowed to be used to subsidize some housing, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And one thing to that end is that if the TIF money is not, if it's not our desire to use the TIF money on this property, that's not mandatory either. You could use it, but the issue is that in downtown, you don't have a lot of spaces or places that you could get workforce or affordable housing. So having this as an option is, is a good consideration. I'll just put it that way.
I agree that the 30 units is a good consideration, but I am concerned, and this was my concern from the beginning, of the income level. I don't know the numbers of what truly the income level is, and would that really be workforce housing? Is it really the 78,000, or what is it? Does it, in comparison to citizens in Daytona Beach? That's concerning to me.
So as stated, our current data is based on the MSA, the Metropolitan District that we're here. The median income for a four-person household in this MSA, which includes Deltona, Daytona, and Ormond Beach, is $64,900. If we were to look at a single individual, that is $45,500, but most single individuals do not live on their own.
That's Deltona what?
Deltona, Ormond, and Daytona Beach.
Okay. And what's the median income for Ormond?
It is all a MSA. It's a metropolitan area, so the statistics are merged. There's other ways you could go if you use census ACS data, but based on our conversation with the Bureau of Economics and Financial Research out of UF, they don't trust the ACS data alone. They actually put a modifier on it, as do most affordable housing studies that we've compared.
That sounds good, but When I think of Ormond Beach, I don't think that we have the same median income levels.
We don't.
Yeah, no argument.
I'd like to know, because if we're going by Ormond and Deltona, because Daytona, the income levels are completely different. Will not be affordable housing for people in Daytona Beach. That $45,000 or $64,000, who has that income level, and we would consider that them in need of affordable housing as far as Daytona Beach is concerned, if you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and again, for a family of four, but also we're referring more to the moderate income level on that spectrum. As we know that in the very low spectrum, the Daytona Beach Housing Authority, in addition to City of Daytona Beach with our CDBG funds, SHIP Home, we encapsulate that very low. Our new focus appears to be to capture that low to moderate range. Anything above the 120% is considered middle income. So this is our first bite of tackling that range.
Well, we might need to go down to below poverty for people to be able to afford these houses. From what it sounds like, we would have to go below their income would have to be below poverty in order to get the housing that we really need. 45,000? I just don't know very many people, family of four, where that would be considered affordable housing.
In some of the scenarios I ran 2 base City of Daytona Beach employees, beginning at our starting wage of $31,200 a year. They could afford to live here. A starting Tier A teacher without any additional incentives that are offered, who lives with a Publix deli clerk and has a child, they could afford to live here. A firefighter and a front desk clerk, a starting firefighter and a front desk clerk could afford to live here. But again, those are moderate, and that's workforce. So once we define workforce, that's who this captures, not necessarily those low income.
Yep.
When you say could afford to live there, what % of their income are they using for housing?
That's at 30%, sir.
Okay.
30%.
It sounds as though the type of housing this is designed for not the low income, not the very low. We have other vehicles for that. It is for that working person, that entry-level working person. Is that correct?
I think our initiative is to
So that would be the
increase
workforce
those opportunities.
Okay.
But this would not capture that spectrum, no, ma'am.
Okay.
But wouldn't that still have to be, you're talking about 2 people?
Yes.
So it would not be for 1 teacher and 2 kids?
No, it would not be a single person, but I don't know many single person that live alone, but I'm sure they do.
You
Sometimes
don't?
there's roommates, but no, ma'am, it's based on a couple.
Well, I feel like
Did you just say you didn't know very many single people who live alone?
That's what I said, yes. I'm not saying that they don't live alone. I'm saying within this scenario, it was based on a couple, is how the numbers were worked.
What we have to remember is that this is not meant to be necessarily affordable, but what we're also saying is that if you don't want to use this space, that the TIF, 5% TIF, which is not a lot, though could be used on another property. But you just don't have any property down here. I mean, most of our redevelopment areas, with the exception of Midtown, and we'll get into this later, it's my goal at some point for this commission to say that any increases that we get, that 5% of it will go towards affordable workforce housing. You have to have scale because we need all of them. I know that we most need, because of the high poverty levels that we have, we most need, that for those who are severely impoverished or living at the bottom of the AMI. But we're going to have much bigger projects and real substantial projects like the proposal or the proposed project on Clyde Morris, the hopeful project on Derbyshire. We're gonna have to have units where you're getting 100 units at a time that are specifically for that. But
I just, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I mean, I see in this particular project, the workforce housing component as kind of purely a bonus. I mean, to me, the discussion of this is, that's kind of a value-added proposition, but that's not the main reason we would consider doing this. As far as, and I want to make a few comments about kind of workforce housing and all that. First of all, I mean, I lived alone for many years. I enjoyed it greatly. You know, I think, but part of what Mr. Cicchetti was saying is that if you look at the life cycle that Daytona doesn't have, is what about the life cycle of the young professionals who have disposable income and do those kinds of things? Now, that's different from the examples you were using, and that's not necessarily the people that would be living down here, but I think that's some of what Jack White was trying to draw down to the downtown area. So, I mean, I think we do need to recognize that there is a segment of the population, a very desirable segment of the population that has affordable income, that goes out, that spends money, that isn't in that same circumstance that you were talking about. One of the problems that I think we've had in our discussion of affordable housing, workforce housing, I addressed in an email I sent out to the commission before, is even with that 30% number, I mean, yeah, I mean, there are some examples like you gave, but to me, when I walk around my zone, I'm thinking about, what about the people that work at 7-Eleven? What about the 2 7-Eleven clerks? What about the hotel maid and the valet? What about the restaurant employee and the short order cook at the IHOP or whatever it is? I mean, what is the affordable housing for those people who are making, you know, at the minimum wage? And that at 30%, I mean, you're talking about something like $800 a month is what you can afford. So to me, I think that's what, and that's a discussion for another day, but if we're talking about helping alleviate, you know, and solving workforce housing, I think we're too high. Like Commissioner Henry was saying, I think we're talking about, I mean, people that would love to be making $45,000 a year. I mean, the problem we have is that you can't get, I mean, I have clients who are spending $1,200 a month for one-bedroom apartments, and that's a huge percent of their income, you know, and we know just from general studies that the people with less income consume a disproportionately greater percent of their total income. That's why, you know, consumption taxes are regressive. So, I mean, I think we may have not really pinpointed who we're trying to help. In my mind, it's a much lower income bracket. It's the solution for the people who are at the minimum wage and slightly higher, who are not just living two people together, but, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 unrelated adults trying to subdivide an apartment so that they can live together, who are living in living rooms or on couches. So, I mean, that to me is what I thought our kind of focus was. I mean, to me, this seems like towards the higher end of what we were talking about. But I mean, to me, that's not a big concern in this project, because I see that as just a bonus, a value-added proposition, but not the main merit behind this. I mean, this isn't being brought to me in my mind as a solution to a workforce crisis. It's about a development opportunity, and it's about kind of priming the pump or getting the ball rolling or something. I mean, we see that a lot of stagnation in Daytona. I've only lived here, you know, 15 years, 16 years. But, you know, every now and then you'll see someone who takes that first step, and prosperity seems to kind of follow. I mean, I watched as DeLand kind of, you know, spontaneously combusted and, you know, turned into this phoenix. I saw New Smyrna kind of do the same thing. And it's kind of a snowball effect. Something happens and things start picking up and rolling. But in Daytona, it seems like we're going around putting out the Phoenix fires, and we're going around and we're slowing down the snowballs, and we're doing everything we can to stop any of that thing from happening. So, you know, I think that's been our problem, is that every time there could be something that sparks, we don't allow it, we don't enable it, or it doesn't come here. And I think we have to take a little bit of a chance on some of these projects and go ahead and, you know, wait for that opportunity to get something going. I mean, I'm sympathetic to people who say we should hold out for more, but I mean, do we really want to keep waiting when people are not beating down our door to do this? And again, you know, the people do misunderstand how TIFs are worked out, and I mean, it's not necessarily free money, or it's not you know, cash back in a brown bag to people. All in all, I mean, I think we need to do something with this vacant piece of land that's doing nothing but just getting worse and worse and deteriorating as we watch. And again, I don't know if it's, I can't quite put my finger on what Daytona does that gives us such a hard time in catching this prosperity wave. It just seems like, other cities manage to make things work that shouldn't work. And, they have a esprit de corps, something that gets things going where you have vibrant communities, things that are happening. And for whatever reason, Daytona just hasn't managed to catch that fire. But every time we try, people like Jack White try these innovative ideas. And, I think we need to get behind some of that and support it. So to me, although this may not be the magic unicorn that we want or something like that, maybe it's the development we deserve, and maybe it's a good first start. And I certainly think it's better than nothing. It's better than the status quo. And, you could make the argument that if we're not drawing enough fish or something like that, we need to change our bait or do something different. I don't know if any of those analogies really make sense to me, as I realize that if we continue to do the same thing we've always done, we'll get what we've always got, and that's not satisfactory right now. So, I'm open to this project. I'm open to this idea because I think that we need to do something to try to go along with what we've been doing in this area, which is, trying to encourage development, trying to encourage growth, and trying to see if a different way of doing things will get us a slightly better result. So that's how I look at this. Again, to summarize, the workforce housing thing is a nice extra, but it isn't, to me, the main purpose of this project. So to me, it wouldn't be a reason to vote, against it necessarily. It would be it's just a value added. To me, I think, like Mr. Cicchetti said, this is about kind of priming the pump and getting a project started. And I think that continuing to be inactive and letting things just kind of continue to be inert is not going to solve any problems. And I don't see a whole host of new solutions coming down. I don't see 20 developers lined up to do this. And I think that we should, be thankful that we have an opportunity to try this. And I'm in support of it. Although I recognize we may be able to drive a harder bargain or something like that. I don't know that that's a reason to vote against it. So those are my thoughts for what they're worth.
Do you have any other
Stop putting out Phoenix.
thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, I would have liked to seen something more. I do appreciate Mr. Smith and the discussion we had and the proposal he presented for the 88 parking spaces for no charge for 5 years. I don't think this is, I agree with Commissioner Delgado, I don't think this is something to vote on for affordable housing, but I do believe we do need something in this area. I've lived here 42 years, and we do need something to start and kick off this area. So I am in agreement with Commissioner Delgado.
My comment was not to suggest that we did not support the project because of affordable housing. Just want to say that. My comment is, what sense is it to have a bonus if the bonus doesn't serve the need that you need it to have, that you intend for it to have? That's my comment as far as it being a bonus. I'm okay with the project, but I would like to see the project slightly more, those 30 units slightly more affordable. I would like to see that. And also, I would like to, the $2,000 per unit, to me, if they don't fulfill their obligation, that is a little low to me. And when you talk about the project being 10 million and 1.7 million, I think there's wiggle room in there to make this a little sweeter as far as more affordable and taxing them if they don't uphold the more than $2,000. And that's where I am with it.
I do have a question. The 30 housing units, the price will be established by HUD?
No, ma'am,
No,
it's established by the developer.
the developer.
The $2,000, to speak to that, how the nexus of the $2,000 was derived was based on the previous conversation of $1 per square foot of gross square footage area. This is actually about $1.18 per square foot, so $300,000 is the equivalent of that dollar that we spoke about at the previous meeting.
Okay.
That's all.
Am I right in that the issue with the, right, obviously, I mean, must be a base cost per unit such that the only thing that, I mean, the developer doesn't feel like they can go below that moderate income household definition because otherwise they would either not break even or lose too much money. I mean, that has to be based on the fact that this particular project must have like some sort of minimum cost their costs have to be a certain point where that's definitionally they can't go below that, right? I mean,
I would
is that
have the
part of
developers, I would have the developer speak to that, but yes, I believe the mathematics of the return
'Cause
are
I'm
based
with-
on a certain market rate.
Because I'm with Commissioner Henry in the sense that I don't think this needs to be our focus for affordable housing, and I would like to see it being tailored to people with a lower income. I just don't know if this project can support that because of their cost to bring that unit to bear. I don't know if there's a creative way of getting that value better in another project. Like we've talked before about, putting it to another, taking that, whatever chunk of money that is, and saying, okay, we'll just use that over here. That might be a better solution if that's the problem, because they may not be able to go below whatever that price per unit is. But I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think that's not the area that needs the help the most. I agree with you on that. I just don't know if we have to confine it to this project, if they can make that work.
Point taken.
The manager has a
I
suggestion.
got one suggestion for you, because I think all of us, I think we tried to do too much with this project rather than what the goal was. The goal was to create housing in the downtown area to improve the economic conditions of the area. It wasn't intended to be a workforce housing project as such. So if you take the 30 units out, it's okay, he can go market rate with all of them. You take the 30 units out, you reduce the 10.5 subsidy to 10.2, that's $300,000 that'll come to the city, and we'll put it into a trust fund for affordable housing. And then we'll design, you will take a look at how we get to the number of what you guys are trying to get to is that lower group. And we'll set a standard in that housing program that we'll develop as a result of that.
So does that mean that, I'm just curious, so with that, does that mean that the 30 units go away?
It means that you won't
that.
have a requirement to create the 30 units, the
Well,
30
you could've-
units.
That's what I was saying.
And the 300,000 that represents then goes to a trust fund for affordable housing.
And well, that's what I was saying all along. You didn't have to take that and put that into this project if that's not what you wanted to do. The concern is that you don't have space in downtown to, we're gonna have to find something, but that's okay. We'll
And so-
work through that.
And so, I'm sorry, so then that 300,000 would have to be used toward affordable housing because of the way it's structured in the downtown area. See, if
In the
it's-
CRA.
So if it's not
Yeah.
there,
The
yes,
redevelopment area
exactly.
downtown.
So if it's not there, and I know Zone 3, which is the CRA down there, so if it's not in that space, so now we have a fund with money in it,
may not
and
then
can we
there's no-
reallocate the way it's used? I mean, affordable housing is a broad term. Are there any other ways
There-
that we can use that money?
Yes, it could be used as a linkage, or what do they call it?
Linkage fee?
Linkage,
It could go for,
What?
linkage fee.
yeah,
What could it be used for?
Fee that if they can only, if it's affordable at $800 and the room is $900, then we would issue a voucher for the $100 difference.
And who's administering all of
It's
that?
similar to what the housing authority does right now.
Right.
rent gap voucher.
Okay, so
But does that have to be used for people living in the CRA?
yes.
Yes, or you
Okay.
could use it for land acquisition or the develop of new affordable housing construction or to incentivize other affordable housing
So we would define all
opportunities.
that. We're not
But
trying to
always
define
in the
it right now.
CRA.
But
no matter
always,
what.
yeah, it would be this CRA.
It's always in the
downtown.
CRA.
Okay.
And my objective later is to say that with each CRA, that as we get increases, that if we get something that gets TIF, that we would designate. But I think we need to run that through the CRAs, let them weigh in on it, and then ultimately bring it back as a policy to the commission. But that the staff would allow each CRA to weigh in, give us their opinion, and then we see if there's something that we as a commission would like to say, that when we get things that are TIF applicable, that we would take 5% and put it into this sort of a trust.
And the 300,000 is total for the entire lifetime of the CRA?
Yes.
That 300,000 was for 5 years.
No, it goes for the life of the
Or for the
CRA.
life of the CRA through 2036.
But it's a maximum of $300,000. It's not 300,000 per year or anything like that. It doesn't reincur.
But and what we also have to remember about
funded
this
in the-
project is that if it exceeds 10.2 million, then the bonus of that is,
Goes back
to the CRA.
So I want to just get at something. We haven't quite stipulated where that 300 can be used, but let's say in that CRA, I want to be clear in my understanding, somebody wants to build something, but they want a little bit of support in building, and the home is going toward affordable housing in that particular area. This would then go to help offset.
That could be.
It could be.
Yet to be developed, but that is what it could do.
See, I mean, as a general rule, I like that idea because I recognize a lot of times the base attributes of the property are such that it doesn't make sense to do it, or that builder or that person doesn't have the expertise or the community or banking connections to make it work. So I like the flexibility this affords the city, and I would think the developer, although they're not going to like, having to give up any part of it, I would imagine they would rather not be forced to do something that doesn't fit with their vision for the project. So I love that flexibility. I think if that's what we're going to do as a commission, I think that's the way to do it, what you're talking about, which is having a fund that the city can use and do that within the CRA, and not, mandating the particular developer do something a particular way, which or what they want. Is this applicant, or is that the right word, applicant, is he okay with that switch? I mean, everything else is,
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same value.
Yeah, he is. He's okay with it.
Interestingly, just by making that one shift, the entire mood of the commission has changed with regard to everything. It feels better, almost. It feels like we're not trying to force a situation that we were working so hard to create.
Okay, well, I guess I would be the one to apologize for forcing something as it relates to this, but I will remain bullish on the issue. Oh,
We need
yes.
a proposed amendment.
Yeah.
I don't know who approved the motion, but do we need to make a?
The motion was by
May-
Commissioner May, and
Commissioner
Reed was his
Can
reluctant
I make a
second.
motion to modify the proposal to reflect what we've been discussing?
Whoever made the original motion will
Yes,
need
he
to
has to
amend
do
their
it.
motion, and the second will need to be amended.
Okay.
I took notes. I have three
Please.
changes that I've
Thank you.
noted. The first is to provide for free parking for 5 years for the 88 public parking spots.
Okay, so I'd like to amend that we provide free parking for the 88 parking spots in the particular structure, and,
The second element of the motion would be to reduce the total grant to $10.2 million.
one second, to reduce the total grant to $10.2 million, and the balance would
And
go
third,
into a trust.
To eliminate the 30 moderate income unit requirement.
And to eliminate the 30 moderate income requirements, can we add to that, please, where the funds will go, or is that just a given?
Just a trust fund. Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Okay, that
We'll
That
have to-
seems
We'll have
like-
to create that.
we'll have to create it at some point.
Yes.
That money would just come out of this agreement. So another program will have to come forward to you as to how to allocate that.
But,
Well, you can make a motion to say that program will
okay.
come.
And so I would like
Yes,
to make a
that's fine. It
motion.
won't be part of the agreement.
That's
It'll be
okay,
a
but
separate-
I want it to be on the record that remaining balance will go into a trust fund that is yet to be created in support of our future affordable housing initiative. Yeah.
I amend my motion to say everything she just said. I second.
It was painful.
So I will include that language in the resolution approving the contract.
Mr. Jagger, what are you saying, that it has to be that we're not going to talk about that $300,000 being moved into a trust fund because a different entity or different has to come forward to?
Well, no, I was focusing on the contract language. The
Okay.
$300,000, we'll make a statement in the resolution that money will be earmarked, if you will, toward affordable housing programs in the downtown area. But it'll be up to the commission to establish how that money will be spent.
But it won't be
what
in the
program?
contract with the applicant, or it's not?
It won't be part of the contract. The
Because we
applicant-
just
that number
reduced
will
that
just come
amount.
out. We're
All
just
right,
going to reduce
okay.
it.
We're
I understand,
extracting
I
it
understand.
first, see.
Right, 'cause they don't have to pay it back
They're
to us,
not
it's just,
paying it.
right, I understand,
Correct.
okay. It took
They
me a
don't
second
get
to
it.
catch on, I got you.
Okay, we have a motion.
You know what? Before, I'm sorry, I agree. Let's do it first, but I have a question. Just
Go ahead.
2 weeks in a row now, we've had people provide funds. This is all going toward the same issue. We had somebody come forward with 25,000, someone come forward with 75,000 offer with regard to affordable housing. This is all going into one pool, or are they separate pools?
It would depend on if it's categorical funds, but ultimately, we have to work all of that out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're-
just curious.
That's a
We
step
just-
ahead of where
yeah,
we're at.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we will
Things
identify
were-
that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right, we have a motion, we have a
Yes.
second.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions or comments?
May I confirm with the developer that you are in agreement with the amendments? Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second, and have agreement from the developer. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0.
Can CRAs lend each other money?
No.
No.
Yeah.
That was a quick no.
Excuse me.
Always a way.
That's
There is
right.
a way.
We're going to
So you
move
know there is a way.
Of course, there's gotta be a way.
on to item 6B, which is the Public Works Administration, Victor Stanley, Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard Streetscape Site Furniture Purchase. This is a resolution approving the expenditure of tax increment funds from the Midtown and Downtown Redevelopment Area Trust Funds in the amount of $52,338 for the purchase of the site furniture for the Mary McLeod Bethune Boulevard Streetscape project pursuant to a contract between Victor Stanley, Inc. and Byboard National Purchasing Cooperative, and authorizing the purchase of anchor bolts from the installation of the furniture in the amount of $2,000 from Daytona Bolt and Nut, and providing an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
I have a question,
Yes,
please.
so do I.
So there was a meeting that was scheduled for November 12th. I'd like to know if this is the project on Mary McLeod, which it is in the streetscape. I'd like to know when we're planning on rescheduling that meeting, because I'd like the residents to have their time to listen to what some of the plans are. There was some issues with trees and coverage and making sure we had shaded areas and things of that nature. So I'm wondering when we could please reschedule that meeting.
We'll have to get a date and
Okay.
reschedule it. Yeah.
Thank you.
That was, go ahead. That was my question also. Had the merchants been advised or in on this plan for the benches and everything? 'Cause years ago, there was benches there, and on the request of the merchants, they were removed because they were being used for very nefarious things. That one person would sit on the bench and look as a lookout, and the other person would case the business. And that's why they were removed. And as far as I know, there's been no communication with the merchants, especially the merchants on the east side of the railroad tracks. The trees have been cut down. Other than that, we see some markings on the sidewalk saying benches. We do not want the benches. We have had bad experience with the benches. And already now, there are some people congregating on corners and disrupting business, sleeping in doorways, disrupting business. For the past 3 days, there have been 3 people who are having picnics on the sidewalk and leaving messes. I, as a merchant on that area, on the east side, do not want benches. Absolutely not. Even if they don't have backs, they are places for people to congregate that are scaring other people, customers that would come.
So I'm down there quite a bit, actually, speaking to some merchants, and I actually have spoken to some of the merchants there. I also took the time to contact Ms. Turner-Himes as well, and she has the Merchants Association down there. We discuss benches, we discuss trees. The merchants that I'm in contact with are those who start at Ridgewood and then go to MLK and Lincoln, and then I stopped because they have the Bethune-Cookman exchange there. So from their perspective, their two concerns were benches, but their perspective was this. The perspective was where they were faced and how they were oriented. That was the question. Also, if there were to be benches, if there could be trees that had sufficient covering and not just palm trees that were not quite grown. And so my question to the city manager was mature trees. If we could have mature trees, not trees that still have to grow into their full height. But to this point, this is why I think it would be a good idea for us to have that meeting, just so that we can be very clear on what is going to happen there.
Well, we on the east side.
Which is where this
do not
represents.
want benches. Absolutely, positively, definitely, no. We do want trash cans, which we already have.
And so, yet again, I think a meeting would be a wise thing then, so we could hear the opinions of all the merchants on those
Well,
particular streets.
As far as we know, there was no meeting.
Oh, well, I recognize that. That's why I'm saying I'd like one. That's why I'm saying I'd like one, because I'd like the voices of all the merchants on that street to be heard as well.
Then
And so
why
I think it would be a good thing.
Why would we be voting on this if there hasn't been a meeting yet?
Well, that was my question, was when are we going to have the meeting? I think we're trying to move ahead a little bit, but we can still have the meeting. Are you saying you'd like to stop that from happening?
Yes, I don't think we ought to vote on it until there is a meeting.
So that means we delay MMB again for another month or two.
Well, it should not have come up if there was no meeting with the people involved. And there, like you said, there was no meeting.
Commissioner Reed, weigh in on this for me, ma'am.
Well, because we're already ready to go, if we were to delay this, that meeting should take place immediately, and then we could just pick back up where we left off at, because we're already ready to go. They're already working on it. The mayor's shaking his head, no.
No, I'm shaking my head. Basically, why would we can approve this with the caveat that there's gonna be a meeting, and then the manager and staff just not do it if the people don't want it. But go ahead and appropriate it, because the rest of it's already planned out.
That's
Why
the way we
why
need to
wait?
do it, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't see trees or anything in it. I mean, am I missing? Are there trees and stuff?
They're coming.
They're
in this
coming.
budget? But
They're
not in
coming,
this
yeah.
item.
No,
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 not
no.
Right.
No,
okay,
this was, we've already voted on this part. This is what was taken out before that we were concerned about. But my concern is these benches don't have backs. For folks to sit in and enjoy the view or the.
We'll talk to
the
each other.
step-
They
yeah,
don't
the-
even have a partition.
divider
I
in
mean,
between.
People could sleep on them all the time, like they do in, what do we call it, Riverfront Park.
Well, my concern about that is that's why we have police enforcement. If they're gonna be sleeping on these benches, then it needs to be enforced. So obviously, nothing's being enforced if you're telling us that people are having picnics and doorways. So you need to talk to the police or chief about that.
They sleep in doorways. When
Then that
they
needs to be
used have
reported.
benches.
Because you're allowing that to happen if you're not telling anyone.
What?
You're allowing that to happen if you're not telling somebody that can do something about it. The police needs to be told about that so that
They
it will
have
cease.
been. They have been. We have chased people off.
Okay,
Would you call the police department?
Yes,
Okay.
call them again.
but
follow up with
usually they get up and go after we pretend to call the police or call the police. Sometimes we have stopped the police. Sometimes they have gone on, sometimes they have come up. But there you have congregations during the day. People stand on the corner of Ridgewood and MMB and down the street a little bit ways. And like I said, we had these 3 people 3 days in a row having picnics on the sidewalk and leaving messes.
So I will tell you, this is an interesting story. On that particular day, I missed the memo that the meeting wasn't going to be held. So I had an informal meeting. And the informal meeting went something like this. I was out by the park behind MMB, and there were a group of maybe 15 gentlemen. And apparently they meet there every single evening, actually. They meet there and they sit there and they have fellowship. It truly is gentlemen who are friends, who are finishing work, construction jobs. And these are gentlemen who do need some housing, actually, for single men. That's what they need. And I spent about 30 minutes with them talking about MMB and letting them know what was coming. And they were quite excited. They had seen some things there. And they said, you know what, we would like to see something take place. And of course, the conversation always goes into, why aren't there more businesses there? And I let them know what we are trying to do, and they were excited about the prospect of it. But so there are people who are behind because they would like to also speak to each other, and they would like to do more on MMB, but they actually bring their chairs. They bring their folding chairs out of their trunks, out of their trucks, finishing work. They bring a snack. They're not drinking, but they are having fellowship out there, enjoying each other's company. So we had an informal meeting.
Well, like I said, we were not invited to any meeting. Like you said, that it was postponed.
We'll have a meeting.
We'll have our meeting.
I don't feel
reason
comfortable
not to
voting
approve
on
this
this without having a meeting first.
Okay, so what can I do about some benches with some backs? Because we want benches on the west side of
We'll
MMB.
cover that in the meeting.
Okay, we'll cover that in the meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
There are
we have a
benches.
speaker.
Mr.
I
Mayor.
do have a
Wait, one-
speaker.
Commissioner?
There are benches at Derbyshire Park that can be switched out. They're very nice,
Those concrete benches?
and they have backs.
Do they have backs?
Yeah, they
Yes,
do.
the children don't use them in the basket. They're in the basketball.
They're not being used over there?
They don't sit on them.
The kid, I don't really see the
They're
kid.
on the
And
courts,
then
aren't they?
it's so many, it's quite a few of them. I mean, I guess, is Keith here? Who's here?
Vince?
Vince?
Vince, you want to, I mean, I go down there every blue moon and throw up a shot or two and limp back to the car.
Vince, I know there are quite a few benches, and I know the children, well, I don't want to just say children because there are lots of adults there as well. They're not using all of those benches. I think we just put them there because we didn't have anywhere else for them to go at some point. What can you tell us about those? Can they be switched out for the ones that Paula has?
Vincent Terry, Leisure Services Manager. Those benches were put out there because there was a request from the people that were using the park. And I live in that area, and I see kids and adults using those benches. Depending on the time of day that you show up and what's going on as far as the activity, the benches are being used, not just sitting there idle. And it sort of surprised me that there's been no graffiti on them as long as they've been out there.
That's true.
That was a plus. But they are being utilized.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Henry, for trying. But we'll have our meeting, and then we'll have the discussion on the benches that they would want. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and we have a speaker. Who do we have?
Our speaker is Mr. Sean Collins.
Is he still here?
She's going to check to see if he's still up. Nope, he's gone. Okay. That was my only speaker for
We
that
took
item.
too long on the other
All
discussion.
right, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, let it be noted by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carries 6-1. That concludes our CRA agenda.
Jesus.
Second longest one in history. I think we had the last one was longer.
CRA.
But if there are no comments, we will adjourn this meeting and reconvene in 10 minutes.